About 4,500 years ago, a wonder of the world was built in Egypt, one that continues to amaze people even today. The Great Pyramid of Giza, with a height of 147 meters, this remains the tallest structure in the world for over 4,000 years. Heavy stones were used to build the pyramids, and it is said that its weight is about 6 million tons. Compared to the present-day tallest structure, the Burj Khalifa, which weighs only 5 lakh tons. The question arises is that how was it built? Back then, people didn't have cranes, bulldozers, or modern technology. They didn't even have wheels. Even so, they built a monument that still stands. Can you imagine a structure standing for over 4,500 years through the hot summers, storms, torrential rains, and weatherings? There is no other surviving structure as old as this and as big as this. Let's understand the mystery of the pyramids. The more we go back in the time, the more difficult it gets to figure out what happened, when, and how. It is estimated that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built in the year 2560 BC by the pharaoh Khufu. The monarchs of ancient Egypt are known as pharaohs. We don't know much about Pharaoh Khufu except that he was the second monarch of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Egypt. His reign is highly debated topic. However, some historians estimates claim 23 years, some 34 years, and some more than 60 years. The pyramid is located on the west bank of River Nile. And if you see some photos or videos of it, you will see that it isn't the only pyramid. You would see 2 pyramids built on the same site. Of the 3, the tallest is the Pyramid of Giza, also known as Pyramid of Khufu. Smaller than it is the Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest pyramid in the Egypt. It is said that it was built by Khufu's son Khafre. The third and the smallest is the Pyramid of Menkaure, said it was built by Khafre's son. These are the only monuments from the era. In the additional to these are the Great Sphinx, several burial tombs, and smaller pyramids. There are said to be a total of 118 pyramids of varying shapes and sizes. Many of them have been eroded by weathering. Very few are in a good condition. Perhaps the most well preserved are these 3 pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza. What was the reason for building these? The same reason why several ancient monuments were built. They were built as a tombs. The pharaohs are buried inside the pyramids. Ancient Egyptians believed in the afterlife. They believed that life doesn't end at the death. After death, the soul of the person travels to the underworld, where it is then judged by the gods. Those who lived a life of goodness remain immortal in the afterlife. So to prepare for the afterlife, the pharaohs would commission tombs for themselves while they reigned. A large amount of food, treasures, jewelries, furniture, clothes were to be buried with the pharaohs in the pyramid so that they would be used in the afterlife. After they died, their bodies were mummified and then sealed in the wooden or stone sarcophagus. You might wonder how we are certain that this is why the pyramids were built. There are 2 main reasons. First, we have discovered scripts written on several other pyramids, text on such sarcophaguses and pyramids that tells us about their customs. Second, a majority of historical pyramids in Egypt and Sudan have been used as tombs, but specifically speaking, in the Great Pyramid of Giza, no substantial evidence was found regarding this. So people come up with their own alternative theories. When the archaeologists entered the Great Pyramid, they found 3 relics and an empty coffin. The coffin is believed to be of Khufu, and the treasures that must have surrounded it is believed to have been looted before the archaeologists got to it. Those who disagree with this have come up with bizarre alternative theories. One popular theory making rounds is that the Great Pyramid was a power plant that could generate electricity. People who believed this claimed that the ancient Egyptians were very technologically advanced and that they had already learned how to harness electricity. As evidence for this theory, some of the ancient artwork are presented. On the walls of some ancient Egyptian temples, such artworks have been discovered that they were building a light bulb. They say that the Egyptians had invented it, but then the technology was somehow lost later. Such conspiracy theories are made when there is a lack of substantial evidence in a matter. But the conspiracy theories are often so weird that they make no logical sense. If light bulbs did exist in an ancient Egypt, why have we not found any evidence proving it? In reality, this artwork depicts an Egyptian mythological story. Another popular theory claims that the pyramid was granary to store the crops. This theory was proposed by American politician Ben Carson in 1998. According to his personal theory, the pyramids were built by Jesus Christ's father. The second major reason for coming up with conspiracy theories, religion appeasement by politicians. Anyways, today it is absolutely clear with all the historians in agreement that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built as a tomb. Back then, people believed that the grander a tomb, the more treasures and food in a tomb, the better would be the afterlife of pharaohs. Now, we get to the biggest question. How were these pyramids built? Honestly, this is the most mysterious aspect of pyramids. How did the people build a 147 meters tall structure? Using these enormous rocks, the weight anywhere between 2.5 tons to 80 tons. Each stone is carved so meticulously and evenly when there were no standard tool for carving. How were the stones stacked on the top of each other when people didn't even use wheels? All of this within a period of 20 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza is said to have been built in 20 years. Let's look at the misconception that people have regarding the pyramids. Slave laborers being used to build the pyramids, who were slaves forced to work all day and getting brutally abused and wiped by the supervisors. You would have seen this in some films or others. For a long time, people believed that slaves built the pyramids. A Greek historian from the 5th century BC, Herodotus, was the first to suggest that slaves built the pyramids. But today, we know this is to be false. People who built these pyramids were highly skilled laborers. They weren't starved and abused. Rather, they were given abundant food. They were fed so well that they were strong and more well-fed than the average Egyptian citizen back then. They dwelled in the city near the construction site. Various communities supported them across the seasons, such as farmers. When the farmers weren't actively engaged in their fields, they would help with the construction in their free time. In a way, the citizens in the kingdom were united for the success of the national project. They were very loyal to their pharaoh. About 20,000 to 30,000 workers were involved in this construction, working 10 hours in a day. About 5.5 million tons of limestone, 8,000 tons of granite, and 500,000 tons of mortar were used. Most of these materials were sourced from the nearby areas. At most, they were brought in from the region of southern Egypt that was around 800 kilometers from the site. The question arises, how were these rocks cut? Copper was the most common metal used then. The tools were made of copper. The harder rocks of granite were broken with dolerite. They used some unique methods, such as finding cracks and holes in the rocks, putting in wooden wedges soaked in water in those cracks. When the rocks absorbed the water, the wedges would expand and the rocks would break apart. Now, a major question is, how were these stones moved? Back then, wheels weren't used in carts. There wasn't a vehicle with wheels that they could load up with these stones and easily pushed it to the side. A plausible theory is that they built rafts that floats on the river to move the stone from the quarries, and once the stones were at the pyramids, they were stacked on the top of each other using sludges over wet ground. This is an interesting theory discovered recently in a study in 2014. The basis of this story is this painting found at the tomb of Jehotihutate. This is a tomb built later around 1900 BC. In this painting, you can see 170 people pulling the statue on a sledge. Ropes were used to pull this heavy statue. If you closely look at the painting, you would see that a man is pouring water on the sand in front of statue. At first, archaeologists believed this was a part of ritual, a tradition perhaps of pouring water before sledge. When this was tested out by physicist Daniel Boone and his team, they found out that having a certain amount of water in the sand reduces the friction between the ground and things being pulled. This is a specific ratio, about 2% to 5% of water into the sand. It makes it easier to pull things on a wet sand. Once we understood this, the next question is, how were the stones stacked on the top of each other? How were this heavy stone lifted up without heavy machineries? Normally, a system of pulleys can be used to lift them. But as I told you, wheels as we know it didn't exist in Egypt during the 4th dynasty. It existed for pottery only. They had built an efficient system of ramps. In 2015, a team of English and French archaeologists uncovered a 4,500 years old wooden ramp in a quarry. Scholars suggest that a ramp must have been built like this, a straight slope from the ground to the top. To move the stones up the slope, they installed a system of wooden pillars on the side of the ropes, and then they used the ropes around the pillars to pull up the stones. As you can see in the artwork on the screen, this was suggested by physicist Joseph West in 2014. According to this theory, after completing a level of the pyramid, they would have created a new slope, and to ensure that the angle of the slope wasn't steep, they would have built a long slope. By building a long slope, the tilt of the slope could be reduced. In another theory, it was suggested that they might have used levers to stack the stone on the top of each other. Look at how it works in this drawing. Basically, they would need to take a middle point which would be higher. A long pole would be put atop it, and then it would be easier to lift, turn, and place the stone as planned. Scholars believed that a similar system known as shadowy exists in Egypt for millenniums. They used the same mechanism to draw water from the river Nile to irrigate their fields. These theories sound fascinating, but the inconsistency arises in the form of construction time. We know that the pyramid was completed within 20 years. If 20,000 people transported each stone like this, a stone needs to be placed every 3 minutes, each day all around the year. It seems quite unlikely that they would have worked so rapidly. This is why this is still a mystery to this day. Both the theories sound reasonable, but they do not completely explain what had happened exactly. We do not know that the layers at the bottom were placed without mortar, and then the mortar was added to the layers on the top that increases the stability of structure. This is why throughout thousands of years, the Pyramid of Giza still stands despite several earthquakes. There is also a mystery regarding the mortar. Though scientists know the chemistry of the mortar used, they have not been able to recreate it. And finally, the last step of construction was the outermost layer of the pyramid. It was made of fine whitish limestone. It meant that when sunlight fell on it, these pyramids would shine white brightly. This was lost over thousands of years. The outermost layer have worn off from the pyramid of Khufu and Menkaure. But in the pyramid of Khafre, you can see a part of that layer at the top. Moving on from the construction to the design of pyramids, it is utterly fascinating. Did you know that the pyramids are designed in a way that the direction points exactly towards north, east, south and west? The error here is minute, an error or merely 1/15th of a degree. These are believed to point accurately towards the 4 directions. How could that be? There was no compass back then, no modern technology such as GPS. Once again, researchers tried to give their theoretical explanation about how the Egyptians could achieve such a high level of precision. A popular theory is said to be by following the autumn equinox, when the tilt of the earth allows the day and night to be equal. The shadow on the ground is in a straight direction towards east and west. Using this method, the degree of error in the calculations of pyramid would be the same degree of error in the shadows during the autumn equinox. The second theory is believed to be the constellations, that the stars in the skies were used by Egyptians to align their design. In 1989, Robert Bowell, an author and Egyptology enthusiast, came up with the Orion correlation theory. He claimed that the 3 pyramids in Giza were aligned similarly to the 3 stars of the Orion's belt. He believed that the alignment was intentional and that the ancient Egyptians knew astronomy, that they would track the stars at night and study them, and accordingly they harvested various crops at certain times. Historian believes this is to be a fringe theory. Fringe refers to something that isn't mainstream. Some points that are used against this theory is that the 3 pyramids weren't planned at the same time, neither were they built at the same time. And when this theory was tested by astronomers in 1999, studying the pyramids in the context of the star in the Orion's belt, it was found that the pyramids do not align exactly with it. The thing is that the constellation has moved a bit over the course of thousands of years. Back then, the stars weren't aligned in the same place as we see them now. It was important to discuss this theory as it is a classic case where humans try to find pattern even in the things that have none. When we do not have concrete evidence for something, when we lack an exact explanation, we create our ideas, and if we can find any link anywhere, we believe it to be true. If you take the same thing to the next level, exaggerate it a bit, and you will have bizarre theories. Some people claim that the pyramid were built by aliens because they believe it wasn't possible for human to create this. In my opinion, such theory go against the principle of scientific thinking. This is a shortcut method of somehow coming up with an answer when we cannot find any. It is better to acknowledge the fact that we know and clearly lay out what we do not know, so that the next generation of archaeologists, historians can carry out search on them and discover the complete solution or explanation.
Appreciate you sticking around until the end. If you find this video entertaining, give it a like and consider subscribing to our channel for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.